So over the years, I've been asked a question that has been pretty consistent through the various workshops and seminars and speaking engagements I've presented at. And that question is, what was that moment where your trajectory changed, where things started to come together? So what I want to do is share with you that moment where it kind of all became very clear to me and how I went from being stalled to suddenly having clarity on my path. I realized that talent wasn't enough and how I was going to end up leveraging the structure of a billion-dollar organization to improve my own life path and create a life plan for myself. What I want you to know is that that moment was literally an epiphany for me. And quite frankly, I'm shocked that more people don't realize the similarities between how high capacity growth strategy for a formidable brand or company can be used to get yourself out of a midlife stall. So here's the backstory. I was 36. I was a couple of years removed from a pretty bitter divorce. I was deep in debt, recently remarried, and really just trying to rebuild my life. And somehow along the way, in my late 30s, with a pre-IPO, relatively new startup that would soon become an international retail category killer. And they brought me in as training and development. From a technical standpoint, I was not the most qualified for this job, not by a long shot. But I got the job because I knew how to sell. I knew how to sell myself, and I could teach. I understood the company's pain points, knew how to solve them. I could deliver a message. And so that's what they were banking on, in terms of the value that I would add to the company. But about a month into my time with this company, my boss, Senior Vice President of Human Resources, came up to me and said, I'm going to need your white paper for next year's business plan. And I looked at him and I said, white paper? Well, I had never heard that term before, so I wasn't even sure what he was talking about. But he was talking about a business plan, a white paper on how my department was going to launch its contribution to the company's growth strategy. So I looked at him and I said, yeah, that's not my thing. Like I've never written a business plan before. I'm really more of a trainer, platform person with a lot of selling skills. I know how to sell. And he looked at me and he said, well, then I think we might have hired the wrong guy. Okay, that was a punch in the skull for sure. And in that moment, I realized something. I realized that all my life, my talent was able to get me to a particular point, and then I would stall. And that most of us who stall out end up having to find a new way to start from scratch. And we never quite catch that gear that takes us from being talented to formidable. I came to the conclusion that most high capacity people don't stall because they lack talent. They stall because they were never taught how to build structure around it. And so while I was being asked to create a white paper for this company, I realized I needed one for myself as well. Up to that point, I had never really built anything from scratch. I had never defined a strategic growth initiative. I had never written or constructed a business plan. I never reverse engineered somebody's vision. I had relied on instinct. I had relied on my ability to be persuasive. I had relied on sales ability. And those three things would get me to a certain point in my life, and I would stall. And I began to understand that those things, instinct, persuasion, sales ability, talent, they had their limitations. So that day, where I was told that the company may have hired the wrong guy, I had to make a choice. And that choice was become formidable within this organization and be a part of their great story, or fake it until I got exposed, and then just hope that I could find another avenue to go down. So I went to work. I asked my boss where the previous year's business plan was, where the white paper on my department, previous year white paper in my department was, because I figured at least that would provide me with a reference point and structure on how to build it. So I went and found the business plan, and the business plan was about this thick. And I studied it. I studied it. It was like I pulled an all-nighter, and that's where it came clear to me. Every department, merchandising, marketing, operations, IT, finance, all the departments, they used the same underlying format. They all had different functions within the company. They all had different measurables and different responsibilities in terms of the company's growth plan. Their strategic plan all followed the same structure. And that was the revelation for me, that there was a way to think about growth that wasn't emotional or reactive or instinct driven or just relied on pure talent, that there was structure. And it all started with a very simple but powerful premise. It started with clarity of intent. So I met with the president of the company as all of this was happening. And he wanted to review my plan, and I gave him my first draft, and he had handed it back to me. He was basically asking me if I could clearly articulate intent. Could I convert it into structure and execute it in such a way that the vision and the reality are fully aligned, fully matched up? So what I want to do is I want to give you the structure that took me a year and several iterations to figure out. And I want to give it to you here. And you can start applying it immediately. So when I looked at the structure of everybody's white paper, here were the common thread elements. The first thing is that every department had a vision statement, which was basically their intent for the year, how they were going to add value to the company's success. Next came the financial commitments, not aspirational, not hopeful goals, but literally hard and fast performance commitments that would fuel the P&L. Next was process. So every department had clearly articulated what they intend to do, how they intend to do it, the actual changes, the improvements and initiatives that would drive those financial commitments. Process was then supported by KPIs. These were metrics used to measure performance and make adjustments in real time. Next was training and resources. So every single department, interestingly enough, not only had in their business plan, but had in their financials a line item for training and consulting and other resources. Following that was cross-functional partnerships. So alignment within the organization where everybody was kind of working with each other and not working in silos was super important. And then finally, how do we make sure that the teams are productive and happy? What they were planning to do in order to make sure people felt like they were part of something big was super important. So recap: vision, commitments, process, metrics, training, partnerships, and culture. These were the things that I had learned. And those were the 7 things that took this company from startup to category killer, international retail brand. And I thought to myself, I'm going to take those 7 things and I'm going to apply them in my own life, not casually, like intentionally, and turn them into words that were relative to my life and come up with the structure for how my life was going to change direction, how I planned to have a successful growth strategy. And that was the moment, I think we hired the wrong guy, was the moment that changed everything for me. It took me from a life that was filled with broken relationships, financial ruin, floundering, directionless, to becoming a C-suite executive, an author, a consultant, international speaker, a successful marriage. And what I learned was that structure didn't just change that company, it changed me. And I think it can change you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And thanks for sharing.